This is an audio check for streaming. This is an audio check for streaming. Yes, at this time, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the National Press Club here at the Zenga Room, down on the end of things, but nonetheless very important to us. It's my pleasure to welcome you all, and even more a pleasure to test this microphone for live stream. At this time, we wonder if the live stream is getting it. In fact, I am not a professional politician, not yet. Words come to me a little bit slower sometimes than it seems my colleagues down the street. But nonetheless, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of coalition to build. We have a lot of common partnerships and deal building to enact, and we're wondering if live stream is getting this as the stagehand continues to make his remarks. We'll keep them going out of posterity, out of service, and indeed out of pleasure. This is, in fact, a great honor of mine to speak at this podium at this time. And I suppose our live stream status is still in the air, so we'll continue. We do have remarks, but I am not Margaret White. That would be most unusual. So, and to assume her words as mine in some circles would be considered plagiarism. We are live, and we are not going to do that. I, by the way, am not Ryan Clancy, but I am Peter Artiega. Hello, how do you do? Hailing from New Bedford, Massachusetts. And it was a pleasure to be in Washington, D.C. with you all.
Harassment and fear in order to interfere and prevent no labels from presenting a ballot and a unity ticket to the American public.
I met with a longtime friend of mine who was there to deliver a message from the Lincoln Project that the forces aligned against us would make sure that if I continued with my work, I would never work in politics again, and that we would get it with both barrels.
The Washington Post reported that top Democratic strategy. What's been going on for the last year or so is that different groups of people have been having meetings and planning out a strategy in which they are going to use intimidation, harassment, and fear in order to interfere and prevent no labels from presenting a ballot and a unity ticket to the American public.
I met with a longtime friend of mine who was there to deliver a message from the Lincoln Project that the forces aligned against us would make sure that if I continued with my work, I would never work in politics again, and that we would get it with both barrels.
The Washington Post reported that top Democratic strategists, including current advisors to President Biden and former United States senators, met with former Republicans to figure out how to best subvert a potential third-party bid. They have been attacking no labels on the web and on TV.
Anybody who participates in this no labels malarkey should have their lives ruined.
They need to be burned to the fucking ground.
They should lose whatever jobs they might have. They should be kicked off of corporate boards.
You can activate people in your world that can really have an impact here on the No Labels staff and people around them, on their donors, and most especially on the candidates that they're going to try to recruit to run.
Yeah, I stand by all of it. I was thinking about this, and I mean, to be non-glib as a substantive matter, I stand by all of it. The people who are affiliated with no labels should be publicly shamed to society's utmost ability to do so.
Our opponents made a mistake. They thought this was some political campaign, where they could do or say anything they want. But No Labels is not running a campaign. We are working to secure ballot access, and that's a right that is just as sacred and protected as the right to vote.
Based on the evidence and facts that we have presented to the Department of Justice, it's clear that the conduct that was engaged in here is not protected speech. They are using force to themselves, which is to keep us off the ballot and to prevent us from being able to the American public.
In the 1950s and 1960s, when the KKK was threatening the rights of Black people to vote, Congress passed laws to protect those rights and prevent anyone from interfering with them. Those same exact laws apply.
Maybe you're blending in with the.
Alrighty, okay, I'm gonna hang up. We're gonna deal with something else. Alright, Justin. Okay, we're gonna leave that. So just leave that up live on the website, okay?
Does anyone else at that point? I'm not sure it's the whole lot.
Okay, and then I just want to.
And that one there's a low level. Yeah, I can see if something's introducing it. Not that. Not that. It's the power that the input out. All right, pull out the input, got no input, everything gets bad. Put it back in. It's a low level. Yeah, maybe.
What's been going on for the last year or so is that different groups of people have been having meetings and planning out a strategy in which they are going to harassment and fear in order to interfere and prevent no labels from presenting a ballot and a unity ticket to the American public.
I met with a longtime friend of mine who was there to deliver a message from the Lincoln Project that the forces aligned against us would make sure that if I continued with my work, I would never work in politics again, and that we would get it with both barrels.
The Washington Post reported that top Democratic strategists, including current advisors to President Biden and former United States senators, met with former Republicans to figure out how to best subvert a potential third-party bid. They have been attacking no labels on the web and on TV.
Anybody who participates in this no labels malarkey should have their lives ruined.
They need to be burned to the fucking ground.
They should lose whatever jobs they might have. They should be kicked off of corporate boards.
You can activate people in your world that can really have an impact here on the no labels staff and people around them, on their donors, and most especially on the candidates that they're going to try to recruit to run.
Yeah, I stand by all of it. I was thinking about this, and I mean, to be as a substantive matter, I stand by all of it. The people who are affiliated with no labels should be publicly shamed to society's.
There is nothing going on, and now there is. This is a microphone check for the malt box. Microphone check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, nice and clean in this room. 8, 2, 1, 2. Audio from my headphones sound crystal clear. How are we sounding in BOC? BOC, do we have clean audio? Testing 1, testing 2, we have clean audio. Okay. We're forming a coalition. Pretty soon we'll have a government, folks. Yes, sir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. Okay, how are we doing? I can't, everyone else is not. I can't explain that. Camera setting, maybe? No? Yeah, that's a mystery. Well, that concludes our microphone check. Checking microphone. Hey, Scott, can you hear me? It is always a pleasure divine to test the microphones of the National Press Club, and I will continue to do so. Yes. 1 2 1 2. This is a microphone check from the National Press Club here at the Zenga Room. We are testing microphones. We're testing microphones for sound. We are testing microphones for quality. And at this time, we welcome you one and all to the National Press Club here in the Zenga Room. Welcoming all our illustrious guests here to this room for information, for enrichment, empowerment, excitement, and perhaps a little bit of entertainment. And we're continuing this microphone check. We're talking, at a somewhat, we're talking at a somewhat normal tone. Thanks, Ryan. I see ya. Let's make sure everybody has proper volume, proper signal, because the world wants to hear. We are here, testing sound, testing quality, in the Zenga Room of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And the weather today is freaking cold. We come to you here today from the Northeast United States. Some would say it's south. I am, yes. Would you like me to speak like a politician? Is that a universal code? I will. Gosh darn it, if you challenge me, I'll do downright anything. We're testing for sound, we're testing for quality here in the United States. A beacon of light, of freedom to the rest of the world, here at the National Press Club. We are ready to be live on this cold Thursday here in the United States. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. Sure, yeah, you got it. This is for one and for all. That's right. We offer a sound check to all interested parties. We'll invite you to stay after hours, where a sound check turns into something short of choir, where we call on all of our National Press Club employees to gather together and sound check in chorus. It is, in fact, the highlight of my day, other than lunch. Yes, and we're continuing this microphone check. Yes, 1 2 3. Is it low for all of you guys? Is it low for everybody other than us? Hey, can they bring gain down there for me to bring it up some? They're happy downstairs. So can they adjust it all? Can you guys adjust down there? Down so I can bring it up? Is that possible? Let me know. Did you guys hear me? Can we make up some gain for our other cameramen? Yes, I would love to bring up my fader. Yes. Okay, how about now? Yes, is that better? Okay. Okay, cool. That's about where it usually is. And are we still good downstairs in the BOC? The Broadcast Operations Center on the 4th floor here at the National Press Building of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Indeed. It is part and parcel to the show, isn't it? Video without audio is a clumsy mess. Audio alone is radio. And there was a time that we all loved radio. And now, so as not to reduce this presentation to a radio program, we offer microphone checks to all interested parties with a camera. And we do so jubilantly. We do so with much vigor and excitement. Yes. This is a very exciting time here at the National Press Club to invite such illustrious guests here to our 13th floor and possibly onto the 14th floor, bearing a membership card. You can enjoy yourself in the reliable source bar upstairs in the National Press Club with your membership card. Otherwise, we ask you to stay on the 13th floor, where you are invited to stroll the halls and peer at the various guests that have signed their photographs, our other illustrious visitors. We welcome visitors one and all here at the National Press Club, not just illustrious ones, but no one's making a difference. I don't know. Are we good? Is everyone we good on audio? All parties? Yes? Fabulous. You got one more set now. Oh yeah? Oh well. Whenever you're ready, you let me know.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Please find your seats and we'll get this press conference called to order. I'm Margaret White, Co-Executive Director of No Labels. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for being here with us today. We'll be hearing brief remarks from our speakers assembled here, which should take about 15 minutes. We'd ask that you please hold your questions until the end when we will do a Q&A session. With that, let me turn it over to our Chief Strategist, Ryan Clancy, to get us started.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Thank you all for coming today. So a lot of you know No Labels was launched in 2009 with a very simple mission, which was to give a voice to the common sense majority in this country. And we spent most of our time since then focused on Congress, where we inspired the creation of the bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus and an allied Senate group that was responsible for passage of landmark legislation like the 2021 infrastructure bill. For most of this time, our work was not particularly controversial until 2 years ago, when we started working to get on state voting ballots across the country, which gives us the option to offer our ballot line to a unity presidential ticket in 2020-24. In doing so, we're responding to a clear demand from American voters. The vast majority of them aren't happy with the likely major party nominees. They want another choice, and all No Labels is doing is offering them that choice. Thanks to the Unity 08 versus FEC court decision, a 501c4 nonprofit like No Labels is well within its legal rights to obtain ballot access so long as we are not advocating for a specifically identified candidate. No Labels is not running a campaign, nor will it ever. We're a nonprofit conducting a ballot access drive, which is constitutionally protected activity, comparable to a nonpartisan voter registration drive. I want to emphasize this. The right to obtain a ballot line is just as protected by the U.S. Constitution as the right to register to vote. But powerful forces in Washington clearly don't respect this right and have made it their mission to prevent No Labels access to the ballot by any means necessary. These efforts undermine the work of this organization. It undermines competition in our electoral process and the ability of voters to exercise constitutionally protected democratic rights. Our opponents have been coming at us for about a year now, but at a certain point they crossed a line from hardball politics to something more serious, and that is why we're here today. To talk through some of these issues at hand and how we're responding, I want to introduce you to the speakers you're going to be hearing from today. Dan Webb, here in the middle, is a volunteer No Labels member who has served as a U.S. attorney, leading major criminal investigations, and as a special prosecutor in 6 different state and federal investigations. He's the co-executive chairman of the international law firm of Winston & Strawn. Next to him, to his left, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis, Jr. is a volunteer No Labels national co-chair and civil rights movement leader and icon. He is the former executive director and CEO of the NAACP, a noted author, journalist, organic chemist, entrepreneur, and ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. Dr. Chavis, who began his career as the youth coordinator for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., is one of the leading voting rights advocates in America. Pat McCrory is volunteer national co-chair of No Labels, who served as the 74th governor of North Carolina from 2013 to 2017, and he previously served as mayor of Charlotte from 1995 to 2009. Margaret White is the co-executive director of No Labels, who's played an integral role in managing our ballot access work and cultivating our grassroots citizens network across the country. And finally, Senator Joe Lieberman is the volunteer founding chairman and a longtime volunteer leader of No Labels. He represented Connecticut in the U.S. Senate for 24 years, from 1989 to 2013, a member of the Democratic Party. He was its nominee for vice president in the 2000 presidential election. Throughout his time in the Senate and beyond, he has been among the most influential independent voices and advocates for bipartisanship in the country. With that, we're going to start with Dan Webb. Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And by the way, folks, thanks for being with us here today, because this is a big day for No Labels. Because we are announcing today that No Labels has filed a formal complaint with the United States Department of Justice regarding an alleged unlawful conspiracy to subvert Americans' voting rights and shut down the organization's effort to secure ballot access in the 2024 presidential election. What's happened is that last week, we authored and transmitted a detailed 8-page letter to the Department of Justice, sent it to Kristen Clark, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Nicole Argentieri, Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. And what we did is we outlined our complaint in detail. And we also discussed in detail the evidence we have developed that we believe supports our allegations of what's going on here. And we have requested a formal investigation into the matter by the Department of Justice to get to the bottom of this once and for all and to determine if laws have been violated based on the evidence that we have presented to the Department of Justice. In that letter, we actually, you're going to get a copy of the letter. We're going to distribute it here today, so you'll have it. Read it. You'll see what's in there, but I think you'll agree we have set forth substantial evidence and allege that based on that evidence, there is a group of activists and operatives and party officials who have participated in alleged illegal conspiracy to use intimidation, harassment, and fear against representatives of No Labels, its donors, and its potential candidates. And what you're going to see from that evidence, and read it and understand it, that No Labels believed that after this kept building up over a year period of time, it was time for us to take action. We'd been taking it a long time, and we decided it was time to fight back and go to the proper authority, the Department of Justice, let them see the evidence, and let them make a decision about what's going on here in subverting No Labels' right to get ballot access in this country and to deprive people of the right to vote for the choice that they want. Now, I will say that this conspiracy, sometimes there's been public evidence developed about it. Their tactics are becoming increasingly brazen. I'm going to cite, when you read the letter, I'm going to cite two of the most egregious examples from our letter, but you can decide what you think about it. In December, the Semaphore news outlet obtained an audio recording of a meeting of the alleged co-conspirators in which one participant described how they planned to dissuade candidates from appearing on a No Labels presidential ticket. I'm going to read verbatim what they reported was said by the participant. Quote, through every channel we have, to their donors, their friends, the press, everyone should send the message. If you have one fingernail clipping of a skeleton in your closet, we will find it. If you think you were vetted when you ran for governor, you're insane. That was nothing. We are going to come at you with every gun we can possibly find. Elsewhere in the letter, we describe an event that occurred of how the No Labels co-founder, Holly Page, was approached by a representative of the Lincoln Project and told she had to walk away from No Labels. Ms. Page was told, you have no idea of the forces that are aligned against you. You will never be able to work in democratic politics again. You're going to get it with both barrels. The individuals and groups in question are probably going to, contend, look, we were just engaging in political speech. They're going to contend that, but they're dead wrong about that because under the law that they can't do that. No Labels is a 501c4 organization conducting a ballot access drive. When you decide to launch a coordinated attack intended to threaten, create fear, or intimidate such an organization who is engaged in constitutionally protected activity, that conduct can violate a number of different federal criminal statutes, that we allude to in our letter and have called to the attention of the Department of Justice. This includes a criminal law codified in 18 U.S.C. 241, which prevents individuals from conspiring to oppress, threaten, or intimidate anyone in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. That same statute, by the way, has been cited against Donald Trump in his felony cases. We believe it applies here as well, again, based on the evidence that we've cited to the Department of Justice. Another statute we cite is 18 U.S.C. 245B, which prohibits any individual from interfering or attempting to interfere with, among other things, voting or participating in or enjoying any benefit or activity provided or administered by the United States. So we allege in our complaint even that these efforts actually may run afoul of the federal extortion statute. That's section 18 U.S.C. 1951, which basically prevents any person from actually using wrongful fear and intimidation to secure a benefit for themselves, which in this case is the benefit they wanted to get us, to prevent us from getting on the ticket with the unity candidates. This statute, by the way, has been commonly used to prosecute all kinds of people, including business people, public officials. When you use intimidation or create fear to conduct illegal activities, you have violated the federal extortion statute. Congress actually has ruled that that conduct is so serious, it's actually incorporated in the federal racketeering RICO statute as being a type of conduct that can be prosecuted under the racketeering statute. And finally, these activities are alleged in our DOJ lawyer to likely represent violations of both no labels and voters' First and 14th Amendment rights. So make no mistake about it, the United States Supreme Court has upheld ballot access work that is being carried out by no labels as protected First Amendment activity. And so I want to be clear, this is not just about no labels and its staff. It's about the more than 1 million voters who have now signed petitions to get no labels on the ballot. It's also about the majority of Americans who want another choice for president. The truth is, under the law, no one, and I mean no one, has the right to wrongfully use fear, force, or intimidation or harassment to stop that choice from being offered to the American public. There's no question that once no labels has a ballot and there are candidates chosen to go forward to run, of course these groups have every right to campaign aggressively against that candidate. But what they cannot do is they cannot use force and intimidation and harassment to prevent us from developing a ballot access in the states so that a different choice can be presented to the American public than is being presented today by President Biden and former President Trump. So we allege in our letter that this conduct, which we lay it out in some detail, we think it's illegal, and obviously it's up to the Department of Justice to decide that. But we actually believe the Department of Justice has an obligation to open a formal investigation into these activities based on the evidence we cited. Now, do I recognize that's a decision to be made by the Department of Justice? Absolutely. What we've done is we presented the evidence to the Department of Justice. We've called to DOJ's attention the statutes that we think are being violated and why, and it's up to the Department of Justice with its investigative powers to go ahead and conduct an investigation and get to the bottom of this to find out whether or not laws have actually been violated. We think this type of investigation by DOJ is necessary because it will ensure that voters can be confident that leading into this election that their rights are protected, that if we want to get another choice on the ballot, and as you know, about 65% of the American public want another choice, we have a right to do that with a ballot access program, and this goes to our core electoral rights that are actually the foundation of our system of democracy. Thank you, and I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Chavis.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning. I'm not new to the fight for civil rights. What many may not realize is that my work with no labels is, in fact, civil rights. Voting rights are civil rights. and they are incumbent to every citizen of this nation. Not every citizen of a certain race, not every citizen of a certain party, but every citizen. An attack on voting rights of any citizen or group is an attack on the voting rights of all. Right now, a growing number of Americans, perhaps a majority, feel shut out of the political process. They feel left behind by the two major parties, and they're eager for a new option. Until recently, this has been a political problem, but not necessarily a problem of the law. Well, that is no longer the case. The alleged conspiracy to stop no labels is a brazen voter suppression effort based on the evidence that we have submitted to the United States Department of Justice. If individuals were working to frighten and harass an organization seeking to register disenfranchised voters, the country would be outraged, and those individuals would likely be prosecuted. That is what is happening today, and it needs to be exposed for what it is. Among other things, it is a symptom of our broken political system. Americans deserve better than what they are getting out of both the Republican and Democratic parties. Our identity as Americans is our most important identity. We're a unique country in the world. What defines us is not a race, a religion, or an ethnicity, but a set of ideals. And one of those ideals is that we, the people, are free to choose who represents us in the halls of government. Having the right to vote is an essential part of that freedom, but it is not the only part. Getting on the ballot is every bit as important as the right to vote. In fact, one right is dependent on the other. At this time, I want to turn your attention to the screen, and we're going to offer a small taste of what No Labels has been experiencing over the past year or so. Keep in mind while you watch this that every threat leveled at No Labels as an organization is a threat leveled at citizens and voters across the country. Have a look.
What's been going on for the last year or so is that different groups of people have been having meetings and planning out a strategy in which they are going to use intimidation, harassment, and fear in order to interfere and prevent No Labels from presenting a ballot and a unity ticket to the American public.
I met with a longtime friend of mine who was there to deliver a message from the Lincoln Project that the forces aligned against us would make sure that if I continued with my work, I would never work in politics again, and that we would get it with both barrels.
The Washington Post reported that top Democratic strategists, including current advisors to President Biden and former United States senators, met with former Republicans to figure out how to best subvert a potential third-party bid. They have been attacking No Labels on the web and on TV.
Anybody who participates in this No Labels malarkey should have their lives ruined.
They need to be burned to the fucking ground.
They should lose whatever jobs they might have. They should be kicked off of corporate boards.
You can activate people in your world that can really have an impact here on the No Labels staff and people around them, on their donors, and most especially on the candidates that they're going to try to recruit to run.
Yeah, I stand by all of it. I was thinking about this, and I mean, to be non-glib as a substantive matter, I stand by all of it. The people who are affiliated with No Labels should be publicly shamed to society's utmost ability to do so.
Our opponents made a mistake. They thought this was some political campaign where they could do or say anything they want. But No Labels is not running a campaign. We are working to secure ballot access, and that's a right that is just as sacred and protected as the right to vote.
Based on the evidence and facts that we have presented to the Department of Justice, it's clear that the conduct that was engaged in here is not protected speech. They are using force, harassment, intimidation, and fear in order to obtain a benefit to themselves, which is to keep us off the ballot and to prevent us from being able to present another choice to the American public.
In the 1950s and 1960s, when the KKK was threatening the rights of Black people to vote, Congress passed laws to protect those rights and prevent anyone from interfering with them. Those same exact laws apply to ballot access.
Wow. I now hand it over to my good friend and fellow North Carolinian, Governor Pat McCrory.
Thank you, Dr. Chavis. You know, I've run for city council, mayor, governor, and the U.S. Senate, and I've been called every name in the book by the left and the right, but that was protected speech. And sadly, politics often goes into tough speech, but this is different. You know, I didn't like the speech directed toward me, but it wasn't illegal. But this is different. These groups are using intimidation to keep people off the ballot, and we are alleging in our letter to the Department of Justice that this conduct is illegal and based upon the evidence we presented. I mean, did you see that video? Did you listen to that video? I mean, who do they think they are? Tony Soprano? I hope not. As my friends pointed out, this is not just an attack on a candidate, but on the rights of the American people and our democracy. And I want you to keep watching that video and see it and hear it and feel it. It's wrong. And we need to change. And we need to start changing now, based upon the Constitution. Now also, some of our opponents have claimed that No Labels, some of these same people claim that No Labels doesn't even have a right to secure ballot access unless we register as a political committee that reveals the names of all our supporters. This is a false premise that's been fed to the media. And let me just say they're wrong, thanks to two court cases. As was mentioned earlier, the first was 2010 Unity 08 versus Federal Elections Commission decision that Ryan mentioned earlier. In this case, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled that a group focused only obtaining ballot access was not required to register as a political committee because it was not supporting any clearly identified candidates. And this is exactly what No Labels is doing. And the second, and I think much more important case, was the 1958 Supreme Court case NAACP versus Alabama, where the court ruled unanimously that the NAACP was not required to reveal the names of its supporters because they had a right to privacy and freedom of association. In their opinion, the justices wrote the NAACP members had a right to be protected. The members had a right to be protected from the intimidation that we're actually talking about today, that you saw in the video. We need to protect nonprofits in America, and I'm proud to be affiliated with this one. Now, let me also say this. I'm a Republican, and most of the current attacks against No Label ballot access campaign thus far has come from the left. But I anticipate this because as we obtain ballot access in more red states, which we're doing right now successfully, I anticipate that far-right organizations might try to use these same tactics. I know this game, but let me tell you, we'll fight these groups too. Because as we allege in our Department of Justice letter, we believe the actions of intimidations are illegal no matter where they come from based upon the evidence we presented. I'm proud of being a part of this organization and friends with every person at this table. And I'm glad we're taking this stand. It's now time to nip it in the bud. Margaret, thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. Despite the unlawful campaign to subvert No Labels access to the ballot, we continue to meet and exceed all of our ballot access goals. As you heard mentioned earlier, over 1 million people, citizens in this country, have already signed to have No Labels on their ballot in states in 2024. We're on the ballot in 14 states. We're currently working in 13 others, gathering signatures or have already filed our paperwork to be right now at 27 states we're active in. No Labels ultimately intends to get ballot access in 32 states by later this year. We will decide in the coming months whether to offer our ballot line to a unity presidential ticket. If we do so, that ticket's presidential campaign will be responsible for securing access in the final 18 states plus the District of Columbia. Now I'd like to hand it over to our final speaker, Senator Joe Lieberman.
Thank you, Margaret, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. As I look back, I believe I had my political awakening as a college student when I participated in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom behind great leaders like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and a young man named Benjamin Chavis Jr. Anyway, good to be back with you, Ben. As Dr. Chavis said, our work with No Labels is a matter of civil rights. Our work with No Labels embraces the same devotion to the Constitution, America's founding values, and a willingness to take on the status quo if we think it's not reflecting our best national values. In this case, this year, for No Labels, it's a matter of giving voice to millions of Americans who feel abandoned by the Democratic and Republican political establishments. They're angry at the two major parties, and who can blame them? And they're profoundly disappointed that they're going to be forced to choose once again between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. They want a third choice. There's a lot of talk lately about democracy being on the ballot in 2024. And in many ways, it is. But I think it's really important to understand what we mean by the word democracy. I can tell you when I was in the Senate, I spent a lot of time working with colleagues in both parties to protect America from dictatorships that claim they're democracies. After all, they would say, in Russia, for instance, people vote in Russia. They vote in Iran. They vote in North Korea. But those are not democracies, and those votes are meaningless because long before Election Day, the governments of those countries decide who can and cannot be on the ballot. We don't want that to happen here in America. Voting is just one leg, a critically important one, of course, constitutionally protected, of a real democracy. But the other legs are the rights of parties and candidates to get on the ballot. So the conspiracy we have alleged to the Department of Justice today is no less than an attempt to knock the legs out from under American democracy. These alleged conspirators, based on the evidence we have presented to the Department of Justice, are taking it upon themselves to control voters' choices, to limit the choices of the American people on Election Day, as if the voters in America can't be trusted to do the right thing. That is profoundly anti-democratic. And I must say it's particularly ironic and hypocritical when it comes from people who claim to be concerned about existential threats to democracy. It reminds me of what Pat Moynihan used to say about defining deviancy down. In our political system today, too many people in both major political parties act like their opponents in the other party, and it's not up to America's highest standards. This is anti-democratic, and it's got to stop. Ultimately, what we're talking about today, what we're doing as no labels in the 2024 presidential election, comes down to three core facts. One, the American people want another choice for president this year. Two, no labels is working to provide that choice to America's voters. And three, no one in our country has a right to prevent that choice from being offered to the voters. Those are the facts, and they are also the values that animated the founding of our country and are behind everything No Labels is trying to do this year to make our government work again for our country and our people. Now, I want to turn it back to Ryan, and he'll take your questions.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to take questions from the room. I know there's also people who are listening online. You can put your questions in the box at the bottom, and they'll feed them to me, and we'll try to get them answered. So let's start here.
This is directed at Margaret as an executive director of No Labels. No Labels recently won a court battle in Arizona for the right to prevent candidates from running for office other than president under the No Labels party line. Why should the voters take you seriously as an alternative to the two major parties when you will not run any candidates for office except president, and we still don't know who that candidate for president is?
Yeah, and Ryan, you can speak to this too. I mean, we've said from the outset of this, we are looking to run just one ticket, one time, offer our ballot line to a presidential and vice presidential ticket.
And why does No Labels believe that it should oppose the presidential candidates of the two major parties from being nominated by their party's voters?
Well, we don't think that we're not trying to stand in the way of either party nominating whoever they want. All we're doing is offering a choice that clearly voters want and that the two major parties refuse to provide.
Yeah, can you just sort of back up and connect this back to a voter who may be considering who they're going to vote for? They don't like Biden, they don't like Trump, but they also have other third-party candidates potentially to choose from. There's Robert F. Kennedy, Cornel West, Jill Stein. You guys don't have a candidate yet. Are you putting the cart before the horse here? And this is a pretty aggressive posture for a movement that we don't even know if you're fielding a candidate.
No, not at all, because...
But I think my question is, what should a voter, if I'm an undecided voter, what new information are you giving me today?
The information is that there is a clear and coordinated effort, which we reported to the Department of Justice, to undermine people's choices in this election. And that is not something anybody should stand for. We either believe in democracy or we don't. We either believe in the voters choose or they don't. Dr. Chavis, I don't know if there's something you'd like to add to that.
Well, thank you. This is a very serious moment. This should not be taken lightly. No Labels is working to respond to the majority of the American people. And no one should try to threaten us, threaten our families, threaten our livelihood, because we're trying to extend responsiveness in American democracy to the will and aspirations of the majority of the American people.
Ryan, let me just add briefly. It's a good question, and I get asked it by people all the time. We've been very clear when we began this project for a third choice that our focus had to be on getting on the ballots in all 50 states. Because if we didn't do that, there was no option to run candidates. So that's what we're doing now. But the reality is we're beginning to talk to potential candidates, and when it becomes clear, as it certainly looks it will, that Republicans will nominate Donald Trump, Democrats Joe Biden, then, as we've said, around Super Tuesday in March or perhaps earlier, we will make a decision about whether the data tell us that there's a constructive role for us to play by offering our lines in our third lines in all the states to a bipartisan unity ticket. And then the candidates will emerge. That'll happen, I'd say, no later than April. Be a lot of time between April and November election day for them to offer that third choice to the American people and for the American people to get to know the unity candidates.
And we're going to pass some mics around.
Hi, I'm David Smith of The Guardian. Is there a danger what you're doing here is going to threaten freedom of speech? I mean, especially in the Donald Trump era, so much language is combative. I mean, you have some, people like Rick Wilson, always pugnacious. But if you don't, unless you have evidence of literally a physical threat of violence or something of that nature, what is your response going to be when these people argue we're just exercising free speech and especially the Trump era, anything goes?
I can take a stab at that. Look, the law is very clear. Freedom of speech only goes so far. As you know, there's all kinds of exceptions to freedom of speech. One of the most notable one in the law is that if people actually engage in illegal conduct, that goes beyond freedom of speech. And so while they could contend they're engaged in political dialogue, what they're ignoring is that we are doing a ballot access program. That's all we're doing right now, is to try to get on the ballot so we can offer the ballot to candidates if and when the timing is right. At this point in time, anyone who engages in trying to intimidate, harass, or threaten our people, our candidates, our donors, they've gone way beyond freedom of speech. You'll see the statutes we cite in the letter, but they are engaging. DOJ has to decide this, okay? I don't decide it. We don't decide it. But we've given the evidence to DOJ, which we believe shows that laws have been violated. Freedom of speech does not allow people to commit crimes.
Hi, I have two questions. Number one, given that it seems DeSantis's chances are sinking by the day, and Nikki Haley is basically the only real Republican left who could defeat Trump in the primary, would it be safe to say that you would hope that, because you've said that you wouldn't run this ticket unless it's but if it's only if it's not Trump and Biden, so would it be safe to say that you guys would want Haley as the Republican nominee? And then my second question is, do you are you kind of not talking about who could be a unity, who could be on your ticket because you don't want to indicate that you wouldn't, not faith in Nikki Haley to be the Republican nominee?
I'll just make one comment. We're trying to follow the lead of the American people. Last time we were together with major members of the media was in New Hampshire, where we released 30 items on issues called Common Sense. And that came from the American people. So we're going to be following the lead of the American people. And right now, the American people are dissatisfied with the two potential nominees coming from both parties by a margin that we've never seen, at least in my lifetime. So we're following the lead of what the American people are telling us to do, and that's the decision we'll make at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I'll just add briefly. Look, if Governor Haley does not succeed in obtaining the Republican nomination for president, and she declares any interest in being part of our bipartisan unity ticket, I'm sure people in no labels would give that the most serious consideration. But obviously she's not done that now because she's an active Republican candidate for president. So we're talking to a lot of people in both parties about potentially running. Really, none of them have said no, but none of them have really said, yes, I'm ready. So because they want to be convinced, just like we do, one, that it's going to be Trump against Biden, and two, that there's a plausible chance for a bipartisan unity ticket to win. Right now, based on our polling, we think there is.
Would you want Haley as the? Do you want her to defeat Trump in the primary so that your unity ticket is not needed?
We don't have a preference. It's not for us to tell the Republican primary voters what they're supposed to do. We're here to provide the choice if the public wants it. Yeah.
So if someone had said yes, would you have been more inclined to announce your ticket earlier if someone had said yes? Because in a lot of these, past attempts at unity tickets, they've been candidate-centric, right? You look at Ross Perot and even RFK Jr. right now. He's practically campaigning to get on the ballot in various states. So that's the first question.
All along, we've said we wanted to wait until March to make a decision, so we understand how the major party primaries unfold.
Is
because
March?
Naturally, if somebody said, yes, I'm ready to go right now, well, we'd want to wait to make sure it isn't going to be a Trump-Biden choice otherwise, and also to see who else is interested. We want this, if we offer our lines to a bipartisan unity ticket, we want them really to be our candidates, to be top-tier candidates, and we're confident that they will be.
Is March giving your ticket enough time to campaign when the election's in November? Trump announced in 22, and he's been campaigning since then.
Right. Well,
I'm going to let Ryan, there's some history here, and I think Ryan can talk about the history of presidential history and tickets here. We think there's plenty of time. Absolutely.
Ross Perot didn't even declare until February, and so we think there's plenty of time, especially given the foundational thing we're talking about here, the demand. All right, so that remember the conditions where a no labels ticket is offered it's a demand-driven phenomenon. It's only because the public, an overwhelming chunk of the public, clearly wants it. In the back, why don't we maybe get some questions back there?
So I just want to get more clarity on the colleague here on the Haley. So I know that Senator Joe Lieberman, you mentioned that once Christie dropped out, that Christie is one of has kind of like the personality that No Labels is looking for in a candidate. If Haley does, suddenly we see that Trump and Biden are the two potential candidates for the two parties, in your take, do you consider that Haley does have the characteristics for what a no labels candidate is looking for?
Well, I'd say based on her record as governor of South Carolina and as ambassador to the United Nations, if she were interested in being on a no labels bipartisan unity ticket, we have no idea really whether she would be, then I would say, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of no labels members, Governor Haley would deserve serious consideration. But that's a decision for her to make, and it's not an easy one, so we'll have to wait and see.
So with that, we are going to close the press conference, but we're going to have a gaggle after where we're going to have an opportunity to talk to some of you all individually.
Did you hear anything back from the DOJ? Did they respond at all?
That final question.
We submitted the letter just recently, and as far as we know, they have it under advisement. DOJ normally doesn't make public statements about what they're planning on doing, so it's going to be, it is totally and exclusively up to the Department of Justice to make the decision on whether to start an investigation, to decide who to investigate, how to investigate. We don't have subpoena power. We don't have grand jury power. So
Communication with them has been one way. You sent them the letter. You haven't heard anything back.
that's typically the way it is, yes.
Thank you all for joining us today. You can go to the No Labels press page on our website to get a copy of the complaint.